Hi there, this is Sarah Kuhn. If you are an INFJ or in a relationship with an INFJ or related to an INFJ in any way, and you want to figure out how they operate, what makes them tick, and how to communicate with them better, this is the show for you. It's called The Quiet Ones. This is a show that deconstructs INFJs, what they are, how they think, how they feel, how they operate, and how they relate to people with other personality types. Whether you have just found out that you're an INFJ or have known for a number of years, there is something for everyone. You will learn more about your personality type so that you understand who you are and understand how you operate in the workplace, in relationships, in your family, and with friends. I want you to walk away from every episode feeling like you have a place of belonging, feeling like you are no longer alone, feeling like you have a place to be heard and seen and understood as you really are. This is a place to connect with other INFJs, to learn and grow and really thrive. I want to give you inspiration and real life strategies that are going to help you figure out how to live your best life every single day. Though INFJs are very rare, you are not alone in this world. You are not the only one who thinks the way that you do and feels the way that you do. Hear from real INFJs just like you. Hey there, I'm Sarah Kuhn. Welcome to another episode of The Quiet Ones. I am so excited for this new year. I'm trying out something new that's really scary and it's really a big leap for me, but I'm jumping head in, feet first, head in, however you say it, jumping in all the way. I'm doing videos for my podcast. So if you haven't checked out my YouTube channel, make sure that you go over and check it out. It's youtube.com/The Quiet Ones Podcast. From this episode, hopefully on, all of my interviews with other people will be on video as well. So you can check out the videos, and I really feel like it helps connect and it helps to get to know the people. When I first started doing interviews, I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't like video. It feels weird. I don't like talking to the camera. I don't like looking at myself in the camera. But then I did a couple of them on video, and it's like, oh, it helps so much. It really helps. I don't know why, but it helps to see the person's face and to see their reactions, and it just really helps you feel more connected. I noticed that too for phone calls on FaceTime. I hate FaceTime, like, with a passion, but it makes a huge difference. Like, when I'm really feeling lonely or feeling like I really need to talk to somebody or have a deep conversation with them, sometimes I'll ask them if we can FaceTime, and it just makes me feel so much better. So if you haven't tried FaceTime, definitely check it out, because it's really pretty awesome, honestly. So I want to get straight into the interview that we did. Today I'm going to talk to an amazing and wonderful young lady named Sierra Mafield. She's a kindness coach. I didn't know what that meant either. She reached out to me and she sent me this amazingly beautiful email and asked if she could be on my podcast. And I was like, I don't know what a kindness coach is, but I'm curious. And it's really not what I thought that it was. So I'm really excited for you to hear our interview. I was so surprised at how similar our stories were. And I just had a fantastic time talking to her. So I hope that you enjoy the interview as much as I did. So without further ado, here it is.
Also, side note, I'm in my closet right now, so I just apologize for the background. It's the quietest place in my apartment, so it's the best that I can do.
That's okay, no worries. I'm propped up in my bed. I hope you can see it.
Perfect.
It's very messy.
I did an interview a while ago with someone, and she was in her bed, and I was like, that makes me feel so much better about sitting in a closet.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to do this. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I think it'll go a lot better if we just like have a conversation and try not to stress about it.
Yeah.
I'm new to the whole video thing, and I've done a few interviews, but it seems like the best one are just like these, good conversations.
Yeah, that's how I feel. And it also makes me feel so much better that's like it's an INFJ podcast because I'm like, I know that I'm not the only person that feels awkward. Like I was not the only person that feels nervous. I'm like, this makes it so much easier.
The great thing is too, it's like all of the stuff that I think, even though I talk to INFJs, all the stuff that I think is like, this has to just be me. Like, I'm the only one who does this. And then I'll be like, okay, maybe it's not. And I put it out there, and everybody's like, oh my God, I think it's
Me.
true. I can't believe you said that. I thought it was just me.
It feels so nice. It's like refreshing. You're like, oh man, all my quirks are not, it's not just that I'm like a weird psychopath. Like it's so nice. Oh, I feel it. I feel it.
Yeah. So how did you find out that you are INFJ?
In 2016 or 2015, whatever part of the school year it was, I was a senior in high school and I took the test. And I've always been someone that I love personality tests, but I felt like before that one, they were all just like the random ones that you would Google and it would be like, oh, insert your favorite colors in order and we'll tell you what your personality is. Like just trash personality tests.
Right.
Um, and so when I found that one, I was literally sitting in the cafeteria at lunch with my friends, and they were like, Sierra, take this test. And I was like, what is this? And they're like, no, take it. Like, it's going to be really good. And I was like, okay. And so I spent like 15 minutes taking this test. And then it was like, boom, you're an INFJ. And then I couldn't read through all of the information that was on there at the time because it was like 5 minutes until lunch was over and I was like, dang, don't have time to read through all of this. But then I went home later and I read through all of it and I was like, oh my God, this is me. This is me to a freaking T. And I also felt very like weirdly proud of myself because I was like, oh my goodness, I'm a rare personality type. I was like, I feel so good that I'm this rare personality type. It was awesome. Like I felt so unique and so happy about myself. Um, but yeah, that was how I found out. I feel like it was very much like by accident and it was almost like forced upon me by my friends at the time, but I like it's definitely been the personality test that like I've resonated with the most, you know what I mean? Because there's been like a few others like the Enneagram and that kind of stuff that I'm like, I can like kind of relate to it, but like the INFJ stuff, I'm like, this is me. And now I make like all of my friends take it. I'm like, have you ever taken the personality test on Myers-Briggs? Go do it. Like you need to send it. Like take it right now. So yeah, that's how I found out. It was very much on accident.
Yeah. So how much has it changed your life then?
I would say a lot. I know myself so much better because I like, and this is a classic INFJ thing where I feel like you think that you're like so complicated and you almost like don't even understand yourself. You're like, why am I so different from everybody else? And you don't know how to explain that to other people because you're like, you wouldn't get it. Like you don't have that same like feeling that you're different from everyone else. And so when I read through everything, it really, I mean, I think at first it was kind of like, oh, like it makes sense. But then as I've gotten older over the years, like it's definitely resonated with me even more. And like that just makes me feel so much better because sometimes there's some things where I'm just like this weird, weird person. And then I'm like, oh, but wait, it's an INFJ thing. Like it totally works out. And then like I think just overall it makes me feel like I make more sense in the world and I'm not just this like weird alien that was plopped down from another planet, you know what I
Right.
mean? And I that's like a simple thing, but I think it's just that sense of like inclusion in something else with someone else, even if we are a rare breed, like that makes me feel so much better.
Right, right. Like you were made this way on purpose, and it's not like there's something that's wrong with you or that's messed up about you, but it's like this almost feeling of relief. Like, oh, okay. This makes sense now. It's okay. I don't
Yeah.
have to change anymore. Like,
Yeah. Like
you
you
know,
don't feel like you're like you were just like like you're an accident, like someone was designing you and then they're like, oh, got it, this little like defect over here, like it
right?
like it makes you actually feel like you make sense, like for sure. And that's I feel like on a simple level that's like a pretty basic thing, but at the end of the day that sense of community and inclusion and just like feeling like you're okay is really, really important. So yeah.
Yes, for sure. I've spent so much of my life when I was in grade school and then high school, and now that I have to work, with people just telling me that there was something wrong with me, and or things like, oh, you need to speak up more, you need to be more forceful, or why are you so quiet all the time? And it's like, why do I have to be different just because, like, why do I have to change who I am just because you don't understand me? you know
Yeah.
and that was part of it for me. That was like this, finally I felt like something understood me and gave me the permission to be like, no, I'm not going to change. I don't need to speak up more. I don't need to talk to more people. I don't need to be like everybody else. It's totally fine that I'm just completely different.
Oh my gosh, I can relate so hard to like people being like, why are you so quiet all the time? Like, why don't you like socialize more? And I feel like when I was in elementary school, I always felt like I was like, do I need to be talking to more people? Like, do I need to be talking louder? And then now that I've gotten older, I'm like, I don't feel like talking to you, and I'm just gonna be quiet, and you're just gonna have to deal with it because that's just who I am. So like it's definitely like having that INFJ like just information sitting in front of you, you're like, ah, yes, like it makes so much
Yeah.
sense. Like I don't have to change myself to make everyone else feel better.
I had classes where you were graded on participation, and I
I
was
hate
like,
those
I
classes. They are the worst.
know. Or the class where you go in, and this happened to me a lot in college. There were whole classes that were set up around like a group project, and so you
Those
would
are also the worst. Terrible.
go in on the first day, and they were like, okay, find your group. Your whole class grade is on this one project that you're going to do for the whole semester. And I'm like, oh, like, can I do it by myself? But even
Yeah.
now, at work, I go to lunch an hour before everybody else does, just so I can avoid them. And
Oh my
people
gosh, I relate to that so hard.
they're like, why do you go to lunch so early? And I'm like, well, I don't eat breakfast, because I get hungry early. Like, I don't want to say, well, it's because there are way too many people in the lunchroom at lunchtime. And if I
It's
go to
like you would be offended if I told you the truth about that.
if I go to lunch earlier, I get a quiet hour for my lunch and a quiet hour while everybody else is at lunch. So it's like twice as good, right?
It's perfect. That's so funny. Yeah, I always hated those classes where they're like participation is so important, and I'm like, have you ever read anything about an INFJ? I'm like, can you just not do that to us, please? Like, or honestly, any introvert ever? Like, why?
Yes, you can learn how to survive in those situations, but they're never going to change our personality type where we're going to enjoy them.
Yeah,
That's
I've
really
gotten to
all
a
that.
point where I just like, if I was ever in a group project or anything like that, even if it was just like 5 minutes of group time in class, I would literally be like, listen, I'm gonna be really awkward and you're just gonna have to suck it up and deal with it because I don't feel like talking to you. Like, that's just who I am. And many of those people would be like, oh, okay. And like, I'd be the weirdo, but I'd be like, we're not gonna be friends anyway because I'm gonna stay in my room. So, like, it's all good.
I would usually sit back in those projects, and if it was just a few minutes long or it didn't count for much, then I just sit there and not say anything. If it was a big project that counted for a lot of our grade, I was like, had to have really good grades. That was my thing. I had
Me
graduated
too.
with 4.0. Like, you're not going to ruin my grade just because of some stupid group project. So I would sit there and wait for everybody to put in all of their ideas. And then I would be like, nope, here's how we're going to do it. And you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do that. And that's it.
Yeah.
And
I
they
think
would all,
another problem with those group projects too is like at least personally, like I would always feel like I had these ideas, but I'm like, oh, maybe everyone in the group would think it's really weird because like of that sense of like not feeling like you belong in anything or like you have like the same thought process as anyone else. And so
right?
I would sit there and be like, I'm gonna not tell you my original idea because like you're probably gonna think it's really weird. And so at that point I would also be like, dang, these group projects really suck because I don't want to talk to anybody and I don't want to tell anybody my ideas. So like it's like a double whammy, you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's funny that there's so many INFJs that I've talked to that we all have this perfectionism thing, which I feel like, starts young. And when you're in school, it's all about grades. And once you get to college, it's all about, your grades and the recognition and then the internships and all that stuff. And it transforms into so many other things in your life as well. One of the big things for me, especially going through high school and college, was I felt like I had this purpose that I was
Yep.
put on the planet to do, but I didn't know what it was. And I knew it was something bigger than what most people dreamed about or told me their dreams were. But it was like, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do, because I felt lost and I didn't even know where to start looking for it. But then at the same time, I was terrified that I was going to choose the wrong thing. So I spent like 4 years of high school, and I literally spent 10 years in college because
Oof.
I couldn't decide. And then I get out of college. I've never used my college degree. I ended up with a college degree in criminal justice, and my career has been in digital marketing. So it's like,
That works out so good.
it's like everything that I feared has come true. Because it's like, I'm gonna waste all of this time, and I still don't know what my purpose is. And thankfully, over the last couple of years, I've really figured out what I'm supposed to do. But it took a long time to come to that realization. Did you struggle with the same thing too?
Yes, like 1 billion%. Yes. So like you said with perfectionism, I've been a perfectionist my whole life. I'm a recovering perfectionist, not nearly as bad now. I would say high school was like my peak for perfectionism. And simultaneously, like really started struggling with that feeling of my purpose in high school. I don't think I ever had a problem with it in like middle school or anything, because I think at that point I was like, I don't know what I'm trying to do with my life. I'm just trying to get through like 8th grade algebra, you know what I mean?
Right.
But once I got into high school, and then, everybody starts talking about college and like, what are your after graduation plans? I was like, holy freaking heck, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, it got even worse because of that like perfectionistic, if I can speak, sense of like, what am I supposed to do? Because I felt like I needed to know so that I could tell everyone else, like, here's my plan. And I wanted to like perfect that plan to like let everyone else know what I was doing. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know what my plan is. So it almost felt like I was like faking everybody out of being like, I know what my, post graduation plans are, when in reality, like, I think deep down, I was like, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing. Um, and I always, like my whole life, this is like has always stuck out to me. Like I've always felt like I was meant for something bigger than what the average bear does.
Right.
And I think especially in high school, like opening yourself up to that kind of topic is a little scary, because you're way more susceptible to judgment and people being like, you're a freaking weirdo. I mean, because high school is the
Yeah.
worst.
And then it's
um
like, oh, you're so arrogant. You think you're better than everybody else. And it's like, no, that's not really what it is. It's not that I'm better. It's just that I'm supposed to do something that's like
yeah,
big, but I don't know what it is.
it's literally judgment on all sides, no matter
Right.
where you go. Like, and so that's why you're just like, I'm not gonna tell anybody about anything.
Right.
um yeah, and so when I was in high school, I like probably starting my sophomore year, I was like, okay, what do I want to do in college? Because at that point I knew I at least wanted to go to college. That changed since then, but like at that point I was like, I definitely want to go to school, but I have no idea what for. My big thing in high school was I was a musician. I was in like all the bands, all the choirs, like everything you could think of. And so a part of me, I was like, you know what, maybe I should go into music education. And I stuck with that for like maybe like a month. And then I realized that I would hate teaching little kids anything. So I was like, I'm not doing that anymore.
Right.
um, but that was like a whole other thing, because so many people were like, oh, like you're definitely going to go into music, right? Like you're like the music kid. And I was like, well, psych. No, no, I'm not going to do that. um, so that was kind of like, it was almost like a slap in the face of like, well, if you're not going to do music, like what the heck are you going to do? Because I had been doing music for like 8 years, I think, at that point. And so that was like what I put my entire heart and soul into throughout like my grade school education. And so
Right.
at that moment I was like, great, I don't want to do that, but I have literally nothing else. But then once I was at upperclassmen, I got involved in chemistry. Looking back on this, I like can't even believe this was a thing for me at all. But at the time, I was like, holy heck, I love chemistry. I want to do chemistry in college and do something with that after college. So I took the AP classes. I loved it to death. It was super awesome. I really liked chemistry and it was great. And then I got into college. I stuck with that. I literally like I told everyone I was like, I'm gonna get my chemistry degree so I can be a forensic chemist and do stuff in crime. Because I've always thought that like criminology is really fascinating. I still think it's really interesting. I've
Oh,
since realized that
that's
that is
funny.
not the career for me.
Oh, that's so funny. I did the same thing. And I know another INFJ that I'm actually pretty good friends with who also did the same thing.
That's crazy. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yikes. How wild is that? Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Wow. So I had this whole plan. I was like, I'm gonna go to school. I went to Ohio State. I was like, I'm gonna get my chemistry degree. And then as soon as I got there, I suddenly was like, okay, but wait, chemistry is actually really hard. um and then I realized I was like, my high school classes made this so much easier than it actually is. So like very, very, very quickly started hating chemistry. I loathed it. And so I pretty much got to a point because I had told everyone that I was this is what I'm meant for. Like, I'm going to do this. Or this is my plan. I tried my hardest to figure out a way to stick with it because I was like, I told everyone that's what I was going to do. And that, like, at one point, I told myself that was what my purpose in life was to go be a forensic freaking chemist. And that was obviously like almost like very toxic to myself because I was trying to do something because it was what I had told everyone else I was going to do. I kind of like closed myself off to change, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so then I was like, how can I make this easier on myself? So then I decided that I was going to be a BA in chemistry because I was like, Bachelor of Arts will make that a little bit easier, just a little bit. Um, it turns out that's not really the case. It kind of stayed the same, honestly. It just sucked all around.
Right.
Yeah. And so then once I got into my sophomore year in college, I can like the first semester of that year, I was still a chemistry major and I actually got severely depressed. And I was absolutely miserable. I almost dropped out. I almost failed like 3 of my classes. I was having an awful, awful, awful time. And that was kind of the moment where I was like, okay, something has to shift. Like, I cannot do this anymore. And so that was like, I finally decided it was like, find literally anything else. Like, find something else besides chemistry. Like, get yourself out of this hole. So I kind of realized that, and this sucked a lot, but what finally got me to like get over my perfectionism with like telling everyone else my purpose with the chemistry stuff was I had to just hit like rock bottom. And that was terrible. Like, if anyone that's listening is like feeling like they're not stuck in the right path and they don't want to change it because of what they told somebody else, like, don't wait for the rock bottom to hit, like,
Yeah.
change it now.
Yes, for
Because
sure.
yeah, it was awful. And so then, like, probably like the last like month of the semester, I was doing a little bit of like soul searching, I guess you could call it, although I don't really consider that is what it is. I really was just talking to a bunch of advisors and YouTubing a bunch of stuff. um I eventually decided on landscape architecture, which is such a weird jump. Like, every time I tell anyone that, they're like, "Oh, that's like interesting," and I'm like, "No, no, no, you don't get it." I'm like, "It makes sense. Just let me tell you the story." Um, so I've always loved architecture my whole life. I thought architecture was fascinating. And like, you'd think that when went to college, I would have just like started in architecture like immediately, but that obviously did not happen. And so I ended up like really, I took this like initial, it was like a freshman kind of just like get started in the program course, even though I was my second half of my sophomore year, I took it.
Right.
And I really, really, really enjoyed it. I mean, it was hard. The architecture program at Ohio State and really anywhere, as far as I know, is like ungodly difficult.
Right.
Um, but I it was almost like such a drastic change from the chemistry that I was like, I'm determined to like this and to make this my new purpose, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, this is it. I'm like, this, I'm gonna make this my thing. This is gonna be what I graduate with. I'm gonna go off and do all these really cool, amazing things. Cause at that point I was like, okay, I changed this. Now this has to be my purpose. I was back in that, like, I'm gonna make this happen no matter what I have to do.
Yeah.
And the first semester was fine. It was great. You know, there were definitely some hard parts, as with any college semester, in my opinion.
Right.
Um, but overall I liked it. And then that summer, let me take a drink of water really quick. My throat is getting dry.
Okay.
So anyway, um, that summer I decided that I was gonna start a blog. I'm clearly a very multi-passionate person. So I was like, I'm gonna do 700 different things like while I'm not in school, because landscape architecture was like taking over my entire life. Um, but that was another thing, is that I had always wanted to start a blog like my whole life. It was just one of those kind of like random things that I was like, yeah, that seems really cool. Like whenever you're a little kid and you're just like, that seems interesting, and it just like sticks with you.
Right.
That's why I started my blog. And the main topic that I was talking about was mental health. And the biggest reason for that was because that fall semester, when my depression and my anxiety got so bad, which I've suffered anxiety my entire life. So adding the depression onto that just made the whole thing catastrophic.
Right.
I was like, you know what? I am going to help other people with this, because during that spring semester, along with the landscape architecture, I was going to therapy, I was on medication, I was getting the help that I needed for my mental health after that horrific fall semester. So I
Right.
was like, I'm going to start this blog and help other people with that. And that started to make me realize what my real purpose was, because something that finally kind of clicked for me, that was like the one, what's the word, it was kind of like this similar chain between all of these different paths, between the music and the chemistry and the architecture and the blog and the mental health and everything, was that ultimately I just wanted to help people.
Yeah.
Because when I was in music, I mean, I love music. I think everybody needs to be educated in music at some point in their lives. And so I was like, when I was thinking about that, I was like, I really just want to help people learn to play music. So it was based in helping. When I was going to be a chemistry major, I was like, I want to do forensic chemistry so I can help save people's lives and solve crimes and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then what I wanted to do with my landscape architecture degree was eventually use it to find a way to balance the needs of a technologically growing humanity with what animals and natural creatures, I can't think of the correct phrasing of this, but just like nature in general, like balance the two of those needs together.
Sure.
So all of those different things, I just wanted to help people. And then obviously with mental health, I wanted to help people, you know, not suffer in their depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
So when I started that, I was like, okay, this is like kind of starting to make more sense. But I tried to like push that away, that sense of like just helping people at some point, because I decided on being a landscape architecture major, and I was like, I have to stick with this. It was that same thing of like, I've told people that I'm changing my mind again. Like, this is what I told people. I'm like, this is so awesome. This is my new purpose in life. So I was like, I have to stick with it. And then I started the fall semester. I had officially moved to Columbus, Ohio, where Ohio State's located. And I was like, I'm going to make this happen. It's going to be really, really awesome and whatever. And then about probably like 2 months into, no, not even 2 months, it was like a month into that fall semester, I noticed that my depression was getting worse again. And I realized that I was like, I don't know if I could really do what I want to do with this career, because ultimately most landscape architects, what really, I mean, are architects in general, like really what they do, at least from my understanding, if there are any architects listening to this right now, like change my mind if I'm wrong, but like most of what they do is they work for other people,
Yeah.
and they do what everyone else asks them to do. They design the stuff that they want them to do, and you know, they design their gardens and all that other stuff. And I was like, I really don't want to do that. Like, I even remember when I was telling some of like my other professors and advisors about that plan I had with my degree, I remember constantly seeing these like surprise looks on their faces and being like, I've never heard of that and blah blah blah. And I was like, but why? Like, why is this such a unique thing to use my degree to just help other people instead of doing what everybody else just wants me to do and designing what they want me to design?
Right.
And so that really, really, really bothered me. And at the same time, I had also had this blog going and I fell in love with it. Like, I mean, not only did I really enjoy writing and all that stuff, but I had people just like DMing me and emailing me and being like, you're so helpful. Like, it makes me feel less alone. Like, I love that you're doing this and all this stuff. And I was like, holy freaking crap. I was like, I need to be doing this. I'm like, this is where my attention is getting drawn to every single day.
Yeah.
And so I literally, like, it wasn't a split second decision, but it was an overall pretty quick decision. But I went to my advisor's office and I was like, I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. I am miserable. I mean, on top of it, I was also paying out of state tuition and I mean, all this other stuff that was not going well in my favor, which at Ohio State is very, very expensive. Um, so I was like, if I'm not going, essentially, I was like, I'm not going to pay $40,000 a year, which is the out of state tuition as of right now. I'm not going to pay that money to be miserable in a program that's not going to help me do what I really want to do. And so I signed my leave of absence papers and I was like, see ya, and I left. Um, and then that gave me the opportunity to really work like full time on my blog and eventually turn it into a business that could really help people on like a global massive scale, because I was like, this is really, really, really what I want to do. And so I stuck with that, and eventually I rebranded and now I do kindness coaching, obviously. So that's a very, very like different thing, but that was like a whole year's worth of growth and change for myself. Um, but it was really just like a lot of trial and error, and it took me a while to realize that like ultimately what I want to do is just help people and make a positive difference in the world and be of service to other people. And I can do that through my own business, through my kindness coaching, because I was like, I'm doing this all on my own terms. I don't have to like wait for anyone to tell me what to do. I don't have to listen to anyone else. I was like, I can go out and make a difference in the world and really be of service to these people whenever the hell I want to, excuse my language, but I can just do it all on my own terms. And
Right.
that felt really, really, really good. And it took me years to finally find like what was the similar link between all of these different paths. And I didn't see what that link was like while I was doing it. I saw what that link was with like what I wanted to do with those different degrees, you know, and
Yeah.
that was a long story, but it's the true story.
I loved it. One of the things that you said at the beginning really resonated with me because it sounds a lot like my story. You said that you had this purpose that you were really excited about, and you went and told everybody. And then you're like, oh, maybe that's not the thing. But then you don't want to change it because you've already told all these people. I did the same thing. So when I was in high school, I fell in love with race cars. I know that sounds really weird because that's not really a girl thing.
Hey, everybody has their own thing, man. It's all good.
But um I kind of I spent a lot of time with my dad and he loved race cars. And so all through high school, I'm like, I'm going to do something with race cars. I'm going to go into racing. I'm going to go work for NASCAR somehow.
That's so
And
cool, actually.
he's like, well, you could be an engineer. And I'm like, that's perfect. I love math. I'm going to be an engineer.
That
So,
literally makes me want to like cower into my closet here because that sounds so bad.
so I go to college to be an engineer. And you know what? It was really hard. And my mom's like, you know, girls really aren't engineers a lot. And you know, that's going to be really hard. And I'm like, it is kind of hard, but you know, it's okay. I can take it. And then it got hard and I was like, you know what? maybe this isn't the right thing for me. And she's like, good, I told you, now you should go study business. So I did
Do
that.
something else.
I was so bored. I was like, you know what? I think I just really didn't try hard enough at engineering, and I'm going to do that because I'm really meant to be an engineer, and that's my purpose, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to go work on race cars because I have to do that. I love race cars. And so I moved halfway across the country, and I went to school at UNCC, which is the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, because they had the only motorsports engineering program at the time, because that's where all the race cars are. And I'm there in the middle of this program. I'm one of like 3 girls out of 3,000.
Oh my goodness.
I get stuck in these group project classes where the whole semester is one group project. So your whole class grade is
That's an equation for an atrocity.
Yeah, and I'm older than most everybody at that time too. I was a few years older. So there's all these 18-year-old guys going, you don't belong here. And I'm like,
That's the worst.
clearly. And, yeah, so I applied for this job. I don't even know why I applied for it, which was a marketing job for an agency that worked with race car drivers. And I got the job. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to quit and, like quit school. And I have 3/4 of an engineering degree. And I tell people that now, because for some reason I feel like that makes me smarter. Like that gives me more credibility if I say, listen, I have 3/4 of an engineering degree. All right. I know what I'm talking about. I'm smart.
That's like me with the chemistry. I'm like, I took 2 whole semesters of chem. You better think that I'm intelligent.
But really what it does is people go, well, you're not that smart because you didn't finish.
Right. Right. You're like, thanks. I really needed that.
So I shifted my whole life and I went to work at this agency. And I was doing exactly what I said I was going to do. I wasn't an engineer, but I was going to the racetrack every weekend. And I was working in this industry that I loved. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't happy. And a friend of mine suggested that I go and see her counselor. And I'm like, no, I don't want to go see a counselor. Like only like crazy people go and see counselors. I'm not doing that. And thankfully she was really patient with me and she kept suggesting it. And so finally I was like, okay, because I had a problem with weight. I was gaining weight and I couldn't figure out why. And I was exercising like crazy and I was still gaining weight. So I go and see the counselor and she's like, I think you have depression. And I'm like, oh, why would you say that? What is wrong with you? I don't have that.
I'm offended.
Yes. Like, why would you say that about me?
Oh my gosh.
So I leave and I do this classic, Google search, and I'm searching everything that comes up for depression about everything. And I'm looking at all the symptoms and I'm going, oh, maybe I do have that because all of that sounds like me.
Yep, I can relate.
A month to go back to the counselor and I'm like, yeah, so I think what you said was right. And thankfully she was a great counselor. She was like, okay, like I'm not gonna hold it against you, just come.
I'm not gonna be like, I told you so.
Yes.
That's good.
So 6 months go by and it's like, oh, you have major depression, you have a general anxiety disorder, you have a social anxiety disorder. It's like this whole list of things. And I'm like, listen, I don't know if I want to come back here because every time I come back, I have another thing. And then
you're just making it worse.
Yes. But what I realized after about 3 years was, and it took me getting laid off, honestly, from my job to realize that wasn't for me. And people still ask me now because I still love race cars. And somebody just asked me this morning, would you ever go back? And I'm like, I don't think I would, because it's different now than what it was. And it didn't make me happy. It wasn't what I wanted to do. It made me miserable.
Yeah. I can feel that with the chemistry stuff too, because like even now, like when some people ask me about the chem, I'm like, I still think chem is fascinating. Like I think it's really, really interesting. I could sit and like what's that, like conceptual class and like really
Right.
really enjoy it. But if you were to put me in a lab and be like, do this experiment, I would be like, I hate you, like this is the worst.
That's how it is about engineering for me. I love watching, like documentaries and stuff where they talk about big engineering feats, and I love people talking about how race cars work, and how they pitch and roll when they go into the corner and all that stuff, and it makes sense to me. But when you start talking about calculating dynamics problems, I'm like totally lost.
That literally makes me want to like throw up. I'll be like, no, get away from me.
It doesn't work. I loved it as long as it wasn't practical. So like I did really well in calculus, but once you started getting to physics, then it was like, oh, this is supposed to make sense. Like, no, it doesn't make sense to me now.
Yeah, that was like me, like with chem. It's like I really enjoy, like drawing little diagrams and being like, this is why helium does this. But it's like, oh, you need me to remember that whenever I'm doing an experiment with helium, because that ain't gonna fly. Like, yeah.
It was funny what you said too about always wanting to start a blog. I've started 6 or 8 blogs. I have a whole
Oh
bunch
my goodness, that's crazy.
post on them because I always got that imposter syndrome that was like, oh, nobody's gonna read this, like I'm not gonna stick with it, I don't know what to write about.
Common struggle, yes.
Yeah. And for me, I've known that I've had depression for 5 or 6 years now, and when I was first diagnosed, it was something that I was really ashamed of, and I didn't want anybody to know, and I didn't want to talk about it, and it was like, let's just pretend that I don't have this and just act like everything's fine. And it's only been in the last couple of years where it's like, why? It doesn't make it better. The only thing that's going to end the stigma is when people can talk about it, because having depression and anxiety doesn't make you crazy, because there are so many people who have it. You can still be a normal person because practically everybody in their lifetime is going to deal with depression at some point. It's just that some people have varying degrees of it, and maybe not everybody deals with anxiety, but there are a lot of people who deal with it.
Especially us INFJs.
Yes. Yes. And the more that you talk about it, I just feel like it's just one more thing that we can break the stigma of, and so that there will be more people who talk about it and realize that it's okay, and it's okay to go and get help for it as well when you need to.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think in a lot of ways, and it's almost like in a twisted way, I feel like very fortunate in that I never struggled with, at least not a lot, with that like shame feeling. And the reason why is because I grew up in a household that had mental illness. My mom has depression, my dad is bipolar, I had siblings with anxiety and ADHD and all these different things. And in our household, it was never something that we didn't talk about. We always were like, this is something that's important. We need to be aware of this. Like, and here's how we can help each other through this. And so growing up with that, I think it kind of eliminated that sense of shame within myself, because I didn't have to feel like I was like, oh, I'm alone with this. Cause I
Yeah.
could literally call my mom and be like, I'm depressed today. How you feeling? Like, you know what I mean? And,
Right.
it worked out like well for me in that regard. But I know a lot of people that have also struggled with that shame feeling, and it's because like, and it's almost like flabbergasting to me how so many people still struggle with it, and yet so many people are like, I can't talk about this. And if
Yeah.
they ever do get diagnosed, or they just kind of like realize it themselves, they're like, there's something wrong with me, I can't do this. And in a lot of ways that really really breaks my heart, because I'm like, this should not be a problem. So many people are struggling with this, and I don't understand like why everyone is still like weird about it, you know what I mean? Because honestly, like, this is not a scientifically based statement, but I think more people in the world have some sort of struggle with mental health at some point than people that don't.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, why is this so stigmatized? It's crazy. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to start my blog too, because I was like, we have to end this stigma. Like, people are
Right.
suffering. And
Yeah.
it's like, if there's one more person out in the world that is talking about it, like maybe that's one more person that I could help, you know?
that was one of the things that my friend who got me to go and see the counselor said to me. She just spoke about going to see a counselor openly, like it wasn't a thing. And I was shocked at first. And I finally told her, I'm like, I'm surprised that you talk about that. And she's like, why wouldn't I talk about it? She's like, everybody should go and see a counselor. You don't have to be crazy. And what does being crazy even mean? She's like, everybody's different. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your brain. Well, in my case, there is.
Yeah.
But what's wrong with it is that it doesn't make the right chemicals that it's supposed to. And, that doesn't mean that you're crazy. It means that it doesn't function the right way. It's the same
Yeah.
as if somebody has asthma. You don't call them crazy because their lungs don't operate the way that they're supposed to. You just say, oh, that's unfortunate. What do we need to do to fix it?
Yeah.
But that was how she put it. She's like, I think everybody needs to go see a counselor at some point. There's nothing that it will hurt. It will only benefit you from going to talk to somebody. And she was right. It definitely does.
I completely agree with that. Like, I think even if you don't have any mental illness, like, you should definitely go to counseling, because my opinion is that everyone in the world can do some form of personal development at some point, because like nobody's perfect. And counseling can for sure help you like realize like these different personal development areas, or like, just even if you don't have like anxiety or depression or whatever, like maybe there's just some areas where you're like, no, yeah, I could use some work there. Like, counseling, I agree with your friend, like that's for sure beneficial for everyone. If you're people that are listening to this right now, be like, if you're not in counseling yet, just go, like just insert yourself there and see how it changes your life, because seriously it will.
Yes. If nothing else, you just have a third party to bounce something off of who has no skin in the game, and they can tell you how it is. And, they're not biased in any direction, which is nice. A lot
Oh
of
yeah,
times.
that's so helpful.
Yes. So tell me, what is kindness coaching? Because I read when you emailed me about doing an interview, I was like, I don't know what this is. And sometimes I don't really feel like I'm kind a lot. And I recently, just a couple of years ago, moved to Boston.
Oh, I love Boston.
Boston gets a bad rap for being really rude.
Yes, when my boyfriend and I went there were a few people that I was like, okay, all right, this is happening.
I don't think that in general people in Boston are rude. I think that it's just that there's a lot more introverts here and they sort of keep to themselves.
Yeah.
I lived in the South and I grew up in the Midwest as well. So I've been in different parts of the country. And when I worked for the marketing agency, we traveled all over the United States. So, I've been everywhere. And Boston seems to fit my personality really well. Like, you can ride the train with 1,000 other people and walk into the city, and you're walking around the city, nobody bothers you, nobody says hi, nobody expects a good morning or a wave or anything like that.
The introvert in me is like, that is amazing.
Yes. Yes, and people are more straight to the point. They're very straightforward in their communication, and sometimes, that feeling part of my personality is like, oh, why did you, like, that kind of was hurtful. What did you say like that for? But most of the time it's like, oh, this is awesome. There isn't a whole lot of small talk. We're going to get straight to the point, and it's going to, it's going to be great. You guys are just as awkward as I am, which really works out for me.
The perfect utopia of a place to live right there.
Yes. Yes.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And so I was a little bit concerned when you sent me that email. I was like, I don't know if most people, once they get to know me, they don't really describe me as kind. You know?
You've come across as kind the whole time, so you're doing good.
They usually say quiet and straightforward and usually sarcastic.
Same.
So I'm very curious, like what it is.
Yeah, so first of all, I love that this sounds weird, but I love that you were someone that you're like, what the heck is kindness coaching? Because so like, it's like, yes, like I knew there was no one else out there doing this. But really, I think the best way that I can explain it, like, is to kind of go back to where it just like kind of popped into my head, was that my most of my, at least probably since I was like 15, I've always been like, why can't people just be more nice to each other? I just don't understand why. Like, I feel like it's not that hard to just be a good freaking person. And that always kind of stuck with me. And I mean, I was raised by good people. My parents are lovely people. Like, I mean, I've always had that like good atmosphere, but it was
Right.
like within myself, I was like, I need to be kind to other people. And I think that also stems from like my feeling of purpose of like helping other people. It all kind of like interconnects, of course. Um,
Right.
but as I got older, I just like I got like so intense about my passion for kindness, because I would see like, you could ask any of like my closest friends or my boyfriend or my parents, like they could tell you that like anytime I would see any, like even the tiniest bit of negativity in the world, I would literally be like, why do people have to act like that? Like, what is the point of that? And I would like get so fired up. And after I had started the blog and I was talking about mental health coaching, and I really loved it, and mental health is obviously still very, very important to me, but it just felt like there was like something that wasn't quite clicking for me. I was like, I don't know if I want to make this my business forever. And so I eventually, I was like thinking about it a lot. And then I remember just like over weeks and weeks and weeks of like talking to my boyfriend about random stuff in the world that was happening. I mean, we live in a world where there's a lot of really, really terrible things going on right now.
Yeah.
And I would just talk to him about like, you know what, if I was in a position of power, like here's what I would do, like blah, 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 blah. Or like, why can't these people do this? Like, and every single thing that I talked about was based within kindness at some point. And it literally, I don't want to say that I had like a light bulb moment, because I don't think it was a light bulb moment, but eventually I was like I was like, holy freaking heck. Like, what I talk about all the time, what gets me the most fired up is the fact that I believe at some point, on some level, kindness can be the solution to every single problem we have in the world that as it is today. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, a lot of the problems are much more complex than that, and there's different layers and, all these different solutions. But I think at the base level of everything, kindness can be what we start from in terms of finding solutions to all these different issues. And that was the moment where I was like, I have to talk about this, because there are way too many people in the world that are not acting with kindness, and it's literally just driving me up a wall. And so I'm just like, I literally rebranded into that back in October 2019. And I didn't really think it through. I was just like, I have to talk about this. This is what fires me up every single day. I have to share this with the world.
Yeah.
And so essentially, I'm like, my main like mission statement, I guess you could say, is that I help people make the world a better, more positive, happier place to live in, using the power of kindness and empathy. Because if we don't start using that power, the world is going to crumble into dust, I believe. And we have to start acting with more kindness and being more aware of what kind of impact that can have. And so many people, they know what kindness is. And I mean, they're taught it by their parents, their teachers, or whoever, but so few people are actually truly acting on it.
Yeah.
And it's that difference between, the knowledge and the action, and there's a gap between the two of those. And I'm tired of seeing the gap. I'm over it. Like, I don't want to continue living in a world that has such a big gap and has so many people that are just kind of assholes, to be honest. um like, I don't want to live in a world like that. I don't want to bring a future family into a world like that. Like, I'm just over it. And so I'm like, I'm going to help other people realize what the power of kindness is and help them actually utilize it more in their lives, so that we can all together make a more positive impact.
Yes, that's amazing. That's completely amazing. One of
Thank
my
you.
biggest one of my biggest pet peeves, that something that I just can't stand, is people who don't think about other people. And I think that it's because I spend so much time thinking about all of the people around me. So when I make a decision, even if it's something as simple as driving in the right lane or the left lane, it's like, which nobody does that here. You know, they just drive in whatever lane they're in, and there's two cars, and they go.
We're just in the middle of both lanes. It's fine.
And I'm just sitting there going, oh, why don't you think about the 12 people that are behind you?
Same.
But there are so many things. In an office that I used to work in, people would slam their office doors, and they felt like it saved them time. So they would just walk in and slam the door rather than shutting it. And it scared me every time it happened. And every time it scared me, I was like, why don't they care about anybody else? Like, they just care about themselves. It doesn't, you know?
Yep. And I know exactly what you mean.
There aren't very many things that make me mad, but that's one of the things that's like, oh, I just don't understand.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Like, you can solve problems like that with people just thinking about other people and having some empathy for the people around them, and to show some kindness and just a little bit more consideration.
Yeah. And that's another thing, like, especially with thinking about other people, like, empathy is so not utilized enough in the world as it is today. Like, it is the thing about empathy, especially, like, I've always been a extremely empathetic person. Like, when I was younger, I was empathetic to the point that it was like causing me like life problems, because I was thinking about everyone else way more than myself.
Right.
So I mean, I think empathy comes with a balance, but what I've realized as I've gotten older is that most people think empathy is like something you're either gifted with or not gifted with, when in reality, empathy is a skill that anyone can learn. Like, I mean, I think there's plenty of people that are more naturally skilled at empathy. Like, for myself, I think I came out of the womb just like soaking up everybody's emotions like immediately.
Right.
And some people are not like that, and that's totally fine. But I think whenever, you know, people hear like, make sure you think about other people, or like be empathetic, they're like, oh, well, I would just wasn't gifted with that, so, you know, sucks to suck. But at the end of the day, it's like, you can learn how to be more empathetic, and being empathetic is like ridiculously important when it comes to actually making a positive difference in the world. Like, I spend every waking moment of my life like being empathetic to some extent, and I'm like, at first it was like, I thought that was maybe why I was so passionate about kindness, that I was just like way too empathetic, until I made that connection that it was like empathy is a skill. And now I'm like, anybody can learn how to do this. Like, literally, it's just a matter of putting in the effort to do it.
Yeah. And I just want to make a distinction, just in case somebody out there doesn't know. A lot of INFJs are empaths, and that means that you can almost feel the emotions of the people around you, which is different from having empathy for people. Having empathy is thinking about other people, which, like I said, is different. It doesn't involve you part of your personality, or actually being able to feel their feelings, because some of us have such strong intuition and are such strong empaths. I don't know if that's exactly how you say it, but it's like,
we're gonna roll with it. I think it sounds good.
We can feel the emotions of other people around us, even if it's something that we've never experienced ourselves. We could just feel it, almost like a vibe coming from them.
Yeah.
But that's not the same thing as having empathy for somebody, which is just thinking about them, which, you're right, it's not something that you're born with. It's something that you can be taught. It just takes a little bit more consideration for people who aren't naturally like that.
Yeah, like, I think you're right. Like, the INFJs are probably more people that like I said, that have just come out of the womb just like feeling up everybody's emotions and like whatever. But I actually, one time I told my mom, I was like, because my mom always tells the story of how when I was born, I just came out like super angry and like pissed off. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's because everybody else in the room was just really angry and pissed off. So I just like soaked it all up in my tiny little baby body. I don't know.
You soaked it up from her because she was in so much pain.
Yeah, she was probably just like, get this over with. I just have to say, if my mom is listening to this right now, I hope you enjoy how many anecdotes I've included about her in this episode. That's all I gotta say. But I think you're right, of like, the INFJs of the world are like the ones that are super, super, super empathetic, like almost to a point that it can cause you problems because you're thinking about everybody else so much. But at the end of the day, like, anybody can learn the skill of empathy. It's really just a matter of putting in the effort to be able to do that. And I think that that requires a certain level of self-improvement and self-discipline and personal development. And there are many, many, many people in the world who don't want to put in the work that it takes to improve themselves. So they're like, nope, not going to do that. And then at the end of the day, the only thing that does is just add more negativity to the world. And that is the last thing that we need more of, like,
Right.
by any means. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. That is so awesome. I am so glad that
Thank
you're
you.
doing that.
I appreciate that. I feel it's very, very, very rewarding. Like, every single day, I'm like, look at me making a difference. Like, it's so good.
That's so awesome. So tell us where we can find you, your website and your social media.
Yeah, so my website is sierramayfield.com, and my Instagram, which is really the only social media I participate on because I'm super, super active on Instagram. I'm on stories like every single day. I have really fun stories. I just gotta say that. But that's also just Sierra Mayfield, and I'm gonna spell it because it's spelled weird, but that's SIERRAMAFIELD.
I hope you guys really enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I had the best time talking to Sierra. It is so nice to connect with other INFJs and to hear their stories. And every time you just say, me too, me too, me too, it just makes such a huge difference. It makes me feel so completely amazing to be able to know that there are other people out there that are just like me and that are just like you. So thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate it. I have so many interviews coming up in the next couple of weeks. So many wonderful and amazing people have agreed to be on the podcast. So this year, the format is going to be a lot different because I just have so many more interviews to do. I still want to share your stories. And so if you have a story that you want to share with me, definitely send it to me. The email is podcast@infjwoman. Or you can always send it to me directly on Instagram and Facebook. I reply to all of my direct messages, and I'm paying a lot more attention to the comments as well. Trying to. So definitely send me some stories, send me some wins, some experiences, whatever it is. I would love to hear from you. So, yeah. There was one thing that I wanted to share with you. Okay, so somebody sent me this on Instagram, and I wanted to read it to you. It says, hello, I'm on podcast number 7, which I'm assuming that's season 1, episode 7. Common traits. Oh my god, thank you for this episode. Someone in the world is living what I am living. I always feel like no one can understand how I see the world, how I can see the future. I really do. I know ahead of time what is going to happen in a relationship or on different situations. I really can't see the outcome. This scares me at first, but then I get used to this intuition thing. Also, no one knows the real me. They only know what I want them to know, and a lot of other things, but the most important is that I remember I'm in a constant searching of my best friend. I always wanted to have a relationship like a best friend. But like I saw other girls at school and middle and high school, it's been very disappointing. And I'm very tired of looking. A couple of years ago, I thought I found it, but nope, I was wrong. I was so disappointed and sad. This person who was not a good best friend, it took me almost 2 months to recover from the disappointment. I give a lot to this relationship that I want to have. And while it's very disappointing, all of the symptoms are there. Not even my husband knows me that well. How difficult it is to be me. How difficult it is to be all of us INFJs, right? Absolutely love it. I feel like my best friend is on the other side of this podcast. I so much appreciate it every time you guys send me these things. It's so completely amazing. And just the similarities. I mean, I go through the same thing when it comes to friends. I feel like I have a few friends, and it's just been recently, honestly, that I've connected with a couple of more people that are actually my age, because most of my friends are quite a bit older than me. But yeah, you put so much into friendships, and a lot of times I end up chasing people, which I'm trying really hard not to do. But I find somebody who's like, I feel like I would be a really good friend for them. And I want to be their friend, and usually I admire them some way. And then I feel like I put a lot of myself into almost chasing them and trying to convince them that we would be really good friends. Um, and then of course it always ends up going badly, and they're like, why are you doing all of these things? You know, like, you're going way out of your way for me. And then they never reciprocate because, you know, they're like, who is this crazy person who's after me? Um, which is what I'm saying about myself. I hope that you guys don't do the same thing, but I've talked to a lot of INFJs who say, yeah, I kind of do the same thing. So I'm trying to make sure that all of the friendships that I have, that it's more of a reciprocal relationship. And if there's a friendship that I have that they're not giving as much as I am, then I sort of back off and say, okay, I'm going to give as much as you're giving. And if you're okay with that, then I can be okay with that too. And maybe this isn't this best friend forever type of friendship that I'm looking for, but maybe I can find it somewhere else. I have realized, though, that I only have the capacity for so many friends in my life. And if I'm holding on to those people who aren't prepared or aren't ready or don't want to give me as much as I want from them, or as much as I'm giving to the relationship, if I'm holding space for those people, then I don't have any space for the people who are willing and ready to give me what I'm looking for, right? So it's almost like you kind of have to let go of some of those people who aren't the right friends so that you can make room in your life for people who are the right friends. So that's definitely the advice that I have for you. I'm trying really hard to live up to that in my life as well. It's difficult, though, because it takes a whole mindset shift. And it takes some practice. It's like building a new habit, saying, okay, I've done this one thing for probably your whole life. And for me, that's like, I've done this one thing for 34 years, and it's served me for all of that time. But here I am at a different place in my life, and this thing that I've done, this decision that I've always made, it doesn't serve me anymore. And so I need to do something else. I have a book, too. Oh, I used it to prop my computer up. Yeah. Because I'm very, very professional and technical, so I'm using books to prop my computer up so that it looks halfway decent. This is a new book that I got for Christmas that I'm so super excited about. Those of you who can't see the video, it's called The 5-Second Rule. It's by Mel Robbins. It's one of the best books that I've ever read, honestly. And I really suggest that you read it because it's completely awesome. Mel Robbins talks about how to form new habits and you have to like create a different pathway in your brain, basically, because your brain is just conditioned to choose the same thing that you've always chosen for your whole life. It's kind of like an automatic setting. And in order to change that, to form a new habit, there's some steps that you have to take, which is where her 5-second rule comes into play. So when I finish reading the book, I'll share more of it with you because it's completely awesome. But definitely check it out. And especially if you're still working on your New Year's resolution, which I hope that you are. I'm doing okay on mine. Some of mine are really good. I mean, we're doing a video podcast here, so that was one of mine. One of mine is to be more present and more seen, which is taking more videos and more pictures on social media, sharing more of my personal life with you. So you're going to see that some more, hopefully. I'm working on that. That's one of them. Another one of mine is to lose weight, which is a struggle, and it's awful, and it's not going as well as it should. But, you know, if you're in that position with your resolution, I would encourage you not to give up, but to be gentle with yourself and to say, okay, this is a process, and it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight, unfortunately. So yeah. I don't know what else So again, thank you so much for listening. Definitely check out the video on YouTube if you haven't yet. I will share it on all of my social media, but again, you can find it on youtube.com/The Quiet Ones Podcast, and I'll put a link for it in the show notes as well. There's also going to be links, like we said, for all of the information so that you can find Sierra on her website and all of her social media. So thank you so much for listening. Please make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen, especially if it's on YouTube. And leave a comment too, or a review. That helps other people to find us. Again, thank you so much, and we'll see you again next week.